Hey everyone, thanks for joining Mecha X Official. I wanted to share something today with you that I've had some reservations about, namely because there's a little bit that I use that's not necessarily something I created, and I didn't want there to be any misconceptions about that. So I'm a regular home producer, Joe Average, just like you guys, unless you happen to be millionaires, which I appreciate you watching. Really today I just wanted to share this template with you. This is essentially my startup template, and it's for most projects that I use. It does tend to evolve a little bit over time, but where I'm at now is probably the longest run I've had with this template sitting still. So I tried to blow it up a little bit to make it a little easier to see everything that I've got going on here. It does look very standard, I know, but I just want to give you guys a little bit of insight into what's here in the template and give you an idea of how best to maximize and make use of everything. So first off, I do try and keep everything color-coded in here. I have a drum bus, a bass bus, synth, lead, and pad bus as well, just to kind of generally break everything down. And then of course I color coordinate everything to kind of keep track of where I'm at, what I'm working with. Inside each of the buses you will find a few different tracks. So I do keep a MIDI track, and then next to it an audio track so that I can bounce the audio directly from the track. I don't necessarily have to stop, create an audio track. In almost every instance I'll end up bouncing the audio anyhow. So being able to do that as I move through helps me to kind of stick with an idea once I've had it and kind of make some progress, but also give me the flexibility to get it kicked to audio and not take a toll on my CPU at the same time. I work on a little older machine. It's an older Creation Station i5 processor. I did upgrade the RAM in there, but I haven't had many hiccups, even though I'm not running an i7 or i9, the latest Ryzen processor or whatnot. It's really making the most of what you've got available, and that's kind of what this template's built for. So in each of the buses, again, you'll find the MIDI and audio tracks sitting right next to each other. I try and keep everything mapped to where it's pretty easy to navigate. I haven't gone in and done all the fine tweaks for you, but you will see that on the buses I keep everything set to 0 on output, and then all the tracks inside I keep set to -6. I do have just a few returns here, all Ableton Live devices, so you won't need any additional VSTs to be able to make the most of this template. Really, there's a couple things inside of here that I like to think make this template great to work with. The first being inside of the drums here. So I use an Ableton drum rack, and I run this on a multi-channel out. So I have my regular drum rack, but then inside of the drum bus there's also a multi-track setup for the drums. So each of the sounds in the drum rack actually route to individual channels here that allow me to do a little more sculpting and shaping, add effects, and in the end, because this is all kind of broken out separate, where I might not EQ a kick one way and apply it to a snare, this allows me to apply to each of these things individually without affecting the other, and then lastly I can run it all into the bus. In the drum bus I do keep a small chain really to glue together everything. The glue compressor kind of helps all these elements to stick together in one track as it runs to the master. This just helps to really kind of congeal everything, get it to sit nice and firmly together. Also, utility plugin. I keep everything under about 200 hertz, run in mono. I do have the ability here to change that as I do produce a few different types of music. It may call for slightly different things, but these again are just my base settings that I use every time I start up to help save time. Then inside I also have an EQ on the track. I do pump just a little more, about the 200 hertz mark, and then here around the 1.41 kilohertz, just small notches, but you can flatten these out. Heck, you can throw it all away, but you may find that it helps out. And then I do use a little transient shaping just to help add a little punch right at the nose each of the elements in my drum kit. So I've mapped all this stuff out for you. I really hope that this kind of simplifies it. I'd urge you to maybe make a couple things inside the drum rack and then use this and see how it's affecting the sound for you and just what kind of results you're actually getting. So for me, the drum rack is probably my favorite instrument in Ableton. And being able to come in and get started right away is a big part of it. In my basically startup drum template, I do have some empty pads, but I tend to run 2 snares, 2 kicks, open and closed hat, and then 2 cymbals, and also percussion. I may or may not use absolutely every one of the elements. In a larger version of this template, I supplement using Superior Drummer, and it's run kind of the same way in a multi-track rig. So sometimes I may not even need all this. But for guys at home that they're just getting started, really this is just designed to help you get started, moving forward, and helping to finish music instead of worrying so much about what to add, where to add it. This will give you basically the flour, sugar, and water you need, and you're going to decide what kind of cookies you want to bake with the darn thing. So I do have a little secret inside of the drum rack here. Drum rack is super powerful and allows you to do quite a few different things. Say on this snare in particular. So I've got a snare already picked. If I need to layer, I may need a second snare, but what I'm really trying to do here is make this as flexible as possible, because for me, I'm a little indecisive. So I want to come in, I want to make a drum beat, and then if the drum's not quite right, I don't want to have to sift through the 50,000 one hits that I have. I want to kind of move things along a little faster than that. So there's a technique that I picked up. I would strongly suggest that you check out some of the guys out there. Il Gates, I think, is probably like the godfather of this technique, but there's also some other guys that have pitched this in their own little ways. This helped immensely. So inside each of the pads here, there is an instrument rack with your sample. For me, this is great because it lets me see what I'm doing inside of here, but what I'd like even more is to be able to make my drum beat and then kind of move forward. So each of these knobs are essentially my selector knobs, and what I can do is make my drum beat, and then after I've made it, I can kind of pick the drum sound I want. So I'll let you check it out. And yes, I do run 127 of them in there. So in each of these, I have all different snares, and depending on what I'm trying to achieve, I've got pretty good flexibility. On top of being able to select from that amount of snare drums without having to open up a new kit or sift through anything, I can just build my drums and then come in and let the thing play, and essentially switch the sounds from there. This applies to the kicks as well. You probably have your own samples that you favor. I myself am a fan of the guys at Cymatics. They make great stuff. Nice job, guys. But there's quite a few guys out there that make great stuff. So I would urge you to look around. The first step really in being able to take your music to the next level will be starting the right way, and starting with some great samples is an awesome way to really make sure that you're not setting yourself back. You're kind of sandbagging yourself if you're using generic stuff, or maybe you bought one of those 10,000 sounds off eBay. Not really quite the same. So those guys, I would urge you to look out for. Again, Ilgates, Cymatics, both of them worth checking out. So inside of each of these pads, in the instrument rack, I've got the ability to change the transposition, the attack, volume. I can detune, and on this kick drum, I actually can even reverse the sample. So you may want to do something like that on every one of the sounds in here, but for me, not so much. I like to keep it a little more simple, just in case I need something a little different. That's always cool. But being able to have everything available here in the sampler loaded into an instrument rack allows me to have everything mapped here. And of course, without it being just a jumbled mess, you can't really do that all in your drum rack settings. So, or I'm sorry, in your initial drum rack interface here. So the first 8 knobs I've got here, I've got mapped to what I have available. But the percussion, I don't tend to use nearly as much supplemental percussion as would call for a selector knob. So here, these 2 cymbals, 2 hats, 2 snares, 2 kicks, those are all mapped out for selecting, but that really helps to speed along my drums, and it's really helped to take it to the next level, because when I started out, of course, it was cheese, but here you'll see in a couple of the buses, our bass bus and our synth bus, I keep a compressor on, generally just to try and keep the really lows from sounding flabby. It really just helps it to sit well for me. I use standard issue equipment, nothing fantastic. I don't have any magical equipment. So being able to kind of tame this stuff before I even kick out an export, it really helps me to save trouble from listening to it in the car and hearing the bass just sound horrible, because that low end, it can really make your stuff get out of control. So on through each of the buses, there's the ability to run out to the effect sends. I keep a reverb, chorus, and saturator available. Some guys don't even use them. Me, I do from time to time, but very little salt and pepper on whatever it is that you're eating is probably the best way to think of it, because you want that stuff to supplement what you've got going, not be the basis for it. So that stuff is absolutely awesome, but one of the things that really helped me personally to step my game up was a site called Ableton. So the guys at Ableton have been fantastic, and I really wanted to reach out to them before I put out this video and tried to give anything away, because it was quite a bit of work for them, and I just want to appreciate everything that they've done. So they do have tons of freebies available on their website. If you do not have a favorite vendor, I would urge you to check out Ableton as well. The guys know their stuff. They've got templates available. There's plenty of stuff to learn from, and if you email them, they actually respond in timely fashion. So nothing's better than getting good customer service, and a couple freebies don't hurt. A few years back, they had a couple mastering racks that they gave away, and these things were absolute beasts. The Hit the 5 here I picked up from a buddy of mine in the Ableton Live Users Forum. He was kind enough to spread it around, and it was fantastic. So this one has been tweaked a little bit, but I just wanted to make certain that if he came across it, that he knew that was his input. So I do use that on just about everything. I consider it kind of a pre-treatment for the track without getting too in depth on the mastering end, because who knows, I may find a song that I make that's fantastic, and I actually just want to bounce out the individual tracks and have somebody master it. As for now, I kind of do this stuff myself. So Ableton's mastering template here has a couple EQs. This one essentially will help to kind of sculpt what we've got going, and then you can get a little more in depth with their Ableton's EasyQ. So this is mapped out to help get some of the real meat and potatoes of everything kind of dialed in, and it's something that really helped out when it came to mastering my own stuff, because without it, I noticed that I was really just having a hard time getting as loud a track as what I might hear on SoundCloud or YouTube. And definitely when comparing my own stuff to professional stuff, I was like, wow, their stuff is just, it smacks so hard, it's so loud, oh my God. This actually gave me some insight and was able to teach me quite a bit about what I wasn't doing with my production, and a little bit about how the signal flow was affecting stuff at each stage. So I do tend to pre-treat with Hit the 5, and then I run the Ableton's mastering rack. Once this comes out of EQ and I've got it kind of at a right spot where I feel like it's time to move on, the Multiband Dynamics, this is probably my second favorite tool inside of Ableton Live, and I know there's tons of stuff available. Guys will all have their own opinions, but for me, this really helped to step everything up. Being able to understand how it can help you helps tremendously. So this allows me to get some of the stuff broken down in bands, high, mids, and lows, and really push and contain at the same time each of those bands. There's a number of settings in here that I'll urge you to kind of play with carefully so that you don't ruin any productions. Make sure that you don't move so fast that you accidentally save over something that you've been working really hard on, but being able to take this stuff and make the most of it will definitely help you out. After the dynamics, it runs into an exciter. This is broken out again in low, mid, and high bands, and basically helps to just add a little extra sizzle for each of the bands there. And you can add the amount and then in turn adjust the dry wet, and it does have some warm tube on there. This helps to add just a little bit more character. From there, using a stereo imager would be highly recommended by most professionals, for guys that are starting to take their stuff into the clubs, getting their stuff played at maybe an event, or you've got a buddy that spins records somewhere, that type of thing. If you're able to give them a track in mono, its potential to do well on a club system is pretty good. But if you're not able to do that and it's on stereo, if you play it on a mono system, it may not translate the way you want it to. So that tool is fantastic. If you don't understand the ideas there, you can always just turn the stuff off in the signal chain and move on. I do use the Spectrum to take a look at everything, kind of get an idea visually what's going on to verify what my ears are hearing, and then lastly, Ableton's maximizer here, utility, compressor, followed by utility and limiter. This little puppy right here helps to bring everything to the really maximum type of level that you would picture your stuff coming across on the level here. That's probably one of the most helpful things, was seeing how making these final kind of adjustments in a compressor and adjusting the ceiling, playing around with the limiter just a little bit, that really helps you to understand what's going on in a mastering chain. And most folks will tell you to have that at the end. So with that, I urge you to check out the guys again. Cymatics for your sample libraries and stuff. Fantastic guys. They hold events from time to time. I definitely recommend messing with them. Ill Gates, if you've got the opportunity to throw a couple bucks at learning some stuff, the guy's brilliant, and he's quite a character, but definitely recommend checking him out. And then lastly, Abletunes, I really want to thank them for letting me use this in my template and to be able to pass it on to you guys. So with that, I'll bid you adieu. Happy music making, and thanks so much for watching.